So I'm now going to introduce two fundamental criteria that need to be met. Now, this applies for whatever problem you have. It could be an issue with your learning. It could be an issue with your focus or distractions or time management or task management, whatever it is, for whatever subject it is, for whatever stage of education this person is. These are the things that have to be met. These are fundamental, and it can be applied in any context. When we look at situations where failure has a high consequence, think about pilots, surgeons, military professionals. Think about astronauts, or where there's lots of money involved, high consequence, business, software development. When we look at these industries, we see that there is a common approach to reducing that failure risk, and that is to fail fast when it is safe to fail. And this fail fast, fail safe mentality is critical. Often, what I've noticed is that students want to have a perfect result or a perfect score, but they don't understand what it takes to get to that perfect score. And so because in some cases, because of limited life experience, they fill in the blanks themselves and they say, well, in order for me to have a perfect score, I need to be perfect now. And they build this identity around being perfect right now, never making any mistakes. And so instead of what actually makes sense, which is to find your mistakes, fix your mistakes as quickly as possible so that you get to the point where you do have that perfect score, instead, students can avoid challenges, anything that they can do to stop themselves from encountering a possible mistake. Because when they see that they've made a mistake, that makes them very insecure and uncertain. If I made a mistake right now, maybe that means that I won't achieve this goal. So what's important here is that we're not just saying, yes, you must fail fast and fail safe. We are giving them the method to do this. They need to know how to fail and what failing fast and failing safe means to them in order for them to do it. If we simply tell someone, yes, you need to fail fast and fail safe, but we don't teach them how to do this, it can actually make things worse, because now there is a student that wants something that's very important to them, and they know they need to fail, but they don't know how. So they still feel insecure, they still feel a lack of confidence, they still feel anxious, but now there's one more thing to worry about, which is they know they should be failing fast, and they know they're not failing fast, and now they feel like they're doing things even worse. They need to fail, but they don't know how. So that only adds to the pressure and the anxiety. And in some cases, this can lead to a real breakdown. And those teachers that are experienced will know this. When a student is under that much pressure, they can withdraw and break down because they don't know what to do to get out of that situation. So it's important that we give them the message of fail fast and fail safe, but we also teach them how to do that. When I was going through medicine, my primary area that I was interested in, and this is something that I wanted to pursue as a specialty one day, which I never did because I ended up going into education full time, which I'm very thankful for now, was ophthalmology, which is eye surgery. Now, in eye surgery, before you ever operate on a real person's eyeball, you operate on grapes, boiled grapes. You operate on cow eyes that have been dissected, that are available. You have simulations. You do these simulations thousands of times. And only when you are perfect at the simulation level do you then enter into surgery with supervision on a human's eye. So the person that is operating on your eye, it could be their first surgery on a real human. But it is not their first time doing the process. It is not their first time trying to achieve this outcome. They have succeeded on that hundreds of times already. Can you say the same about students when it comes to learning and assessment? Can you say that most students have gone through to rigorously make all the mistakes that they could possibly make to enter into an exam feeling confident that they know how they're going to perform because they've already succeeded at that multiple times already? They know there's no more failures because they've looked for the mistakes that they could make and they could no longer find any. We know that those types of students are very rare, but we also know that those types of students perform very well. So what is it that makes someone that kind of student? It is the ability to experiment and his ability to fail fast and fail safe. So how are the ways that we can do this? Well, we can use that first fundamental technique as an anchor point. When a student has done that first activity, they will come to certain possible experiments. They might think, okay, I'm going to try study with a little bit more breaks here and there because I find that I get very sleepy after a couple of hours. Well, that could be one experiment. And that may not be successful. Maybe the break doesn't help. Maybe it makes it worse. But it's a safe environment and it is an experience. After that, even if it doesn't work, they now know that that didn't work. So they're one step closer to knowing what will eventually work. So as an educator, we need to frame these fail moments as successes. A technique that I use often now is something that I call practice blocks. It's very important how we frame this practice block. We want to tell the student to set aside time in their schedule, 1 hour, maybe 2 hours. And in that time, that is a time where you want to find mistakes. You tell the student, there are mistakes you will probably make. There are mistakes that you are more likely to make that your friend is less likely to make. You need to find what mistakes that you think you will make. And this is the time, the safe space for you to do that. They could do a practice quiz. They could do a past year's exam paper. They could do a pre-test. They could do flashcards. They could do some other type of studying technique that they're familiar with or they want to give it a go. There might be a new technique they've never tried before. And this might be the time where they experiment with it to see how it feels like and to collect some data. The only way to lose, to fail a practice block is to not do it and not find mistakes. If you do it and you find certain mistakes, you have won, and that has to be celebrated. And if you, the teacher, the person they respect, is saying, make mistakes safely and do it often, and when you make those mistakes, you are celebrating that. That sends a very strong message to the students, telling them that failing fast, failing safe is a good thing because the teacher is celebrating it. And this type of positive reinforcement is incredibly powerful. This is the type of reinforcement that could stick with this person for the rest of their life. And here's the best part about this. Well, the best part from a teacher's work perspective at least, these are very easy to do because there are multiple techniques that we can use to facilitate this. So for example, that cheat sheet that we created, we can get our students to do them individually, and we could put them into groups of 2 or 3, and we could get the students to review each other's cheat sheets, suggest things that they've missed. And what you're doing is you're now instructing the students to deliberately look for the things that their friend or peer has missed. So not only are you then training their own ability to think about things critically, but you're increasing their own metacognition as well. Because as we all know, people tend to have very common issues. So in a group of 3 people, they probably all struggle with very similar things. So when they see an idea that their friend has put down that they didn't think about, that's helpful for them too. And then we can have a group discussion about it as a class. Many teachers are familiar with this type of pyramid, self-peer group structure of teaching. We can bring it to the group. We can ask students what types of problems that they've found and what their experiments might look like. When there's an experiment that you listen to and you think, oh, that's a good one, then you'd celebrate that, say that's a very good idea. You're not worried about whether it's right or wrong. What you're worried about is that they thought about it and they tried to create an experiment that could maybe work. And if someone creates an experiment that you think, oh, that's not really a real experiment, maybe they've just said, oh, what I'm going to do is try not to make this mistake again. Maybe the behavior is I'm getting distracted on my phone, and their experiment is I'm going to try to not get distracted anymore. That's not really an experiment. Why? Because it's not looking at the trigger. It's kind of like saying I'm not smart enough, so I'm going to try to be smarter. See, it's not something that we can do. There's no action there. It purely relies on just getting lucky and that effort will be enough. We don't want that. We want those experiments to be targeted to what we think the possible triggers might be. And so we can map these processes out with a cheat sheet. We can use these teaching strategies to create that engagement. And then we can use these practice blocks to get them to have dedicated time to experiment with these things. And then we can, after doing that, reflect on that practice block. We can say, let's do the cheat sheet activity again, but see, how did we find that last experience? And so we create a full cycle. And it's very important that we create the cycle. We should never say experiment, give it a go, and then stop. That should never happen. All experiments should cycle. Why? Because we need the students to know that if it doesn't work once, you have to try again and try again and try again. Not the same way, but with differences. We have to reflect. We have to observe. We have to think about it. And we have to come up with suggestions. And that is, again, an important skill for the students to learn. And what you'll find is that after doing this for weeks or maybe months, your students will be practicing outside of their practice blocks. They'll be reflecting outside of the dedicated reflection times. The quality of their reflections will improve. And this is something that I've consistently seen in training this over the last several years. So I've talked about two very metacognitive techniques that enable your students to succeed. We talked about building self-awareness and metacognition, and we talked about what we can do with that self-awareness and metacognition in terms of helping them to make those adjustments and experiment and therefore fail fast and fail safe. So those two obviously complement each other directly. Now, I could have given you a list of tips on how to help your students stop procrastinating. I could have given you a list of tips on how to improve their focus or how to learn more effectively for biology class, but there's no point because that would be giving the hungry person the fish rather than teaching them how to use their fishing rod. This approach is much more sustainable. It's much more scalable. You can help more students with this. It's much more individualized, and it gives the student control and ownership and positive reinforcement over their progress. Often one of the things that I find is that I'll teach a student a technique like this. They will try to do it, but then their teacher says, "What are you doing? That's not what I told you to do. Don't do that." Now they're conflicted. And they're conflicted because the teacher is a person that they respect. Their teacher told them to do something. If they're saying, "Don't do this," now they have doubt. And this is the power that a teacher can have. When a teacher instructs you to do something, when a teacher celebrates it, because it's not just a, "Oh yes, well done, well done." But you can really see that this teacher is looking at this very carefully. They care a lot about this because it's so clearly critical for success. The students, even if they don't understand why, they will start to think about that. They will wonder why it seems so important. And they will start to internalize a lot of those beliefs. In this process, over weeks or months, as I have experienced and as the research has clearly shown, increases the engagement of students, increases their motivation, increases their academic performance, increases the amount of control that they have over their learning process to achieve their goals, whatever those goals might be.